Hi everyone, welcome to Eve Math Tutoring. Today's lesson is on subtracting fractions. So let's start off with an easy example. Let's start off with 3 over 4 minus 1 over 2. So the rules for subtracting are exactly the same as the rules for adding, besides the fact that you have a subtraction function in the middle. Okay, so the rules for subtracting are the same as addition. So like in addition, when you're subtracting two fractions, you have to make sure that the bottom number is the same number. So you have to have a common denominator on the bottom. And in order to do that, we figured out the lowest common multiple of the two numbers and then use that number to actually make sure that they were both the same. Now in this case, 2 is a factor of 4. So what I can do is I can just change the second fraction, and when I do that, when I multiply 2 by 2, it becomes 4. So now the bottoms are the same, and whenever I do the top, I have to do the same thing. Whenever I do the bottom, I have to do the same thing to the top. So in that way, I'm not actually changing the fraction. I'm just writing it in a different format. So at this point, I'm allowed to write the fraction in this form because I did the same thing to the top as I did to the bottom. So that's why I didn't actually change the fraction. I just wrote it in a different manner. Now once we have it in that form, we can go ahead and subtract. So 3 minus 2 is 1 over 4. And that would be your answer there. Okay, and if I was to list the lowest common multiples of these two numbers in the beginning, if I had made a list, I would have seen right away that 4 was the lowest common multiple. Okay, so that's just a side note. Say we have 10 over 14 minus 1 over 3. So in this case, I definitely want to figure out what the lowest common multiple is. Since 3 is not a factor of 14, I have to actually figure out what is the number that I can change these numbers both into so that they will be the same. So what I do is I quickly make a list of the multiples of each number, and then I find the one that's the lowest common one. Okay, so if I list the multiples of 3, I start with 3 times 1, 3 times 2, 3 times 3, which is 9, 3 times 4, which is 12, 3 times 5, which is 15, 3 times 6, which is 18, 3 times 7, which is 21, 3 times 8, which is 24, 3 times 9 is 27, 3 times 10 is 30, 3 times 11 is 33, 3 times 12 is 36, 3 times 13 is 39, 3 times 14 is 42. So that's a long list there of multiples, okay? Now we can try 14 as well. 14 times 1 is 14, 14 times 2 is 28, 14 times 3 is 42. Okay, so it looks like our lowest common multiple is actually the two numbers multiplied by themselves, so 42. So in this case, our lowest common multiple, the first number that we have in common when we list the multiples of each number is 42. Now how do I make 14 into 42? Well, I multiply it by 3, and whenever I do the bottom of the fraction, I have to do the same thing to the top. So this becomes 30 over 42. In this one, how do I make 13 into 42? Well, I multiply by 14, and whatever I do at the bottom of this fraction, I have to do the same thing to the top. So this becomes 14 over 42. At that point, I can go ahead and subtract. Because I have the same number on the denominators, I can go and subtract the numerators. So 30 minus 14 is 16. Now at this point, we don't leave our answer in this form. We always have to see if we can reduce our answer any further. So you want to start off with the number 2. So you want to start off with numbers bigger than 1. So first thing you want to try is the number 2. And in this case, the number 2 does divide into both of these. So I'm going to go ahead and divide the top and the bottom by the number 2. When I do that, I get 8 over 21. Now when I look at 8 and 21, the number 2 goes into 8. It doesn't go into 21. 3 goes into 21 but does not go into 8. And I can continue in that manner And there is no number that would go into both. So that means that this is fully reduced. No number other than the number 1. Okay. Let's try some mixed examples with mixed fractions. Okay, now in this case, when you're subtracting the fractions with mixed fractions, first thing is when you're dealing with the fractions, the whole numbers you're going to go ahead and subtract, but the fractions here, we need to have common denominators. Okay, so now in this case, what's the lowest common multiple of the numbers 2 and 3? So 2 and 3, so I list some factors of 2, I list some factors of 3, and I see that the lowest common multiple is the number 6. So I have to go ahead and change these fractions first. So to get 2 to be equal to 6, I multiply by 3. Whatever I do to the bottom of the fraction, I do the same thing to the top. Over here, I want the lowest common multiple to be 6, so if I multiply this by 2, whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 4 over 6. Now at this point, the denominators are the same, so we can go ahead and subtract the fractions. However, in this case, we notice that 3 is actually smaller than 4, so I can't subtract 4 from 3. So what I need to do is I need to carry some over from here, and this whole number, into the fraction. So if I take one of the whole numbers and I move it over here, it's actually, as a fraction, I can take 1, and that's the same as 6 over 6. Okay, because 6 over 6 is also equal to 1. So I can bring that 1 over and I can add it to this part. I can add it to this fraction. So when I add 6 over 6 to 3 over 6, when I have 3 over 6 plus 6 over 6, that becomes 9 over 6. So this actually becomes 2 and 9/6. Now, this is the same as this. It's just that we're writing this in a different way. What we're doing is we're carrying 1 over here, but when we bring it over, we're bringing over 6 over 6. We're kind of just give me a second here. Now, when we bring over 1, that's equal to 6 over 6. So, but what I'm doing is I'm actually adding that to my fraction, which now becomes 9/6. And that does make sense, because if I transfer this back into a mixed fraction, it would be 6 goes into 9 once, and 3 over 6 would be left over, and that 1 would add to this. So that's how you get that answer. Okay, so we go ahead and do that. Now these two numbers are the same, so they actually cancel, and then you just do 9, so you subtract the numbers first, so 2 minus 2 is 0, and then 9 minus 4 is just 5 over 6. Okay, so that would be the answer there. So that's a tricky one there. Okay, now let's try, okay, I'm going to show you another way to do this same question. Okay, so let's call this method A. I'm going to go method B. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two values and I'm going to change them to improper fractions. That's another way to solve it. So I could have done that. So I could have done 2 times 3, which is 6 plus 1. So 7 over 2 minus 3 times 2, which is 6 plus 2 is 8 over 3. So I could have written the mixed fractions in improper form, so not actually changing the fractions, just writing them in a different form. And when I do that, then I could have just solved the fraction from there. So how would I solve something like this? Well, I could just multiply this by 3, top and bottom, and I can multiply this by 2. Because I'm doing the same thing to the top and the bottom here, I'm not changing it, I'm just writing it in a different form. And over here again, I'm multiplying top and bottom by 2, so I'm not really changing the fraction, I'm just writing the fraction in a different form. And this way I get the same number on the bottom, so when I do that, I can go ahead and subtract these fractions. And when I do, I get 5 over 6. So you actually get the same answer. Okay, so two different ways to solve the same question. So it's really up to you. If you get an example where you have mixed fractions, you can go ahead and you run into a situation like this where, you know, it's 3 minus 4. And if that you find that confusing, you can just start from the beginning and just convert them, the fractions, into improper form, which we did here, and then just solve from there. So just get common denominators and then go ahead and subtract those. Okay, so as you know, to convert this to improper, we just do 2 times 3, which is 6 plus 1, 7 over the bottom number 2. And then here we did 3 times 2, which is 6 plus 2, 8 over 3, the bottom number here, 3. That's how we convert them to improper. And then from there we worked on with just going from there and getting common denominators, etc. Okay? So that's our lesson. That's my lesson on subtracting fractions. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me at outlook.com. You can also post questions on the channel, eveemathtutoring@outlook.com. So any more questions about subtracting fractions? If there are some examples that you have that you don't understand how to do, you can feel free to email me and ask me to post a video on those, how to solve those examples, etc. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye.